It's Jimmy Buffett Friday on the John Phillips Show. Johnny's back on Thursday. It's Randy Wang here, and the phone number to join us is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for the John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. For many years, Johnny and I have covered the straight up corruption and irresponsible behavior of California's two-time elected insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara.
I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
Most recently, we told you about that incredible investigation from ABC7 in the Bay that showed Ricardo Lara's taxpayer-funded travel, where he was taking all kinds of unnecessary trips because why not? He wasn't paying for it, including going on a safari in South Africa. Well, there is a new Ricardo Lara scandal emerging, and it is causing victims of the fire in Pacific Palisades and the fire in Eaton Canyon to come together and call for Gavin Newsom to pressure Ricardo Lara to resign.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
This all comes thanks to new reporting, not from the LA Times, but from the New York Times, showing secret deals that Ricardo Lara cut with insurance companies while he was crafting his sustainable insurance strategy that incentivized these insurance companies from dropping policies left and right. Let's not forget, the whole reason Ricardo Lara was tasked by Gavin Newsom with rethinking our insurance strategy was too many people were on the FAIR plan. And here we are 2 years later, and there's double the amount of people on the FAIR plan. And that number has not gone down even this year, now with his strategy implemented. Well, let's find out what the locals are saying, why so many people gathered yesterday to call for Ricardo Lara, the state insurance commissioner, to resign. Here's KTLA.
California's insurance commissioner is under fire after an investigation revealed an alleged secret deal with insurers before January's devastating wildfires.
I am not surprised. I am not shocked. This is the same guy that promised when he ran for this office that he wasn't going to take any money from the insurance industry. And then he did. And remember that whole thing where he was trying to charge his rent for the place in Sacramento to his office? Just every single thing about this guy. And what does it say about us that we elected him to this position twice? And he has no experience in the insurance industry.
Survivors of the Eaton and Palisades fires gathered today in Altadena to demand Ricardo Lara resign as hundreds of homeowners struggle to recover.
The victims say no one in power is holding the insurance companies responsible.
Yeah, for as much talk as it is, and I understand California's overregulated. Prop 103's made it impossible for insurance companies to get what they need just to be able to do business here. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I am not buying that one bit, because for the last 7 years, the insurance company has had a bought and paid for stooge doing their bidding, giving them everything they've ever wanted and more. And they're still dropping policies.
Responsible. Mary Beth McDade live in the Palisades with more. MB.
Yeah, Mike and Chair, many fire victims say that this is just adding salt to an already very large wound.
I mean, what are we, 10 months, 11 months out from this thing? And still, you have so many people who are not being made whole with the contracts they had with the insurance companies. And we're not just talking about the FAIR plan. We're also talking about State Farm, who got an emergency rate hike, thanks to Ricardo Lara, who said, I'm going to approve this rate hike, and then I'm going to schedule a hearing so they can prove their case. But I've already approved it, and they did not have to prove their case, and he didn't even show up to that meeting.
Thousands of families lost coverage just before the disaster struck.
Altadena and Palisades fire victims gathered in Altadena to express their outrage after learning that Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara privately struck a deal with insurers, allowing them to drop tens of thousands of policyholders ahead of the LA fires. Fire victims learned of the deal from a New York Times report, which found that about 11,000 policies were not renewed in or near areas that burned in January.
What is even harder to accept, and what literally keeps me up at night, is that no one in power is holding these companies accountable.
I mean, you would think if there was ever a need for an elected insurance commissioner, it's when you have one of the worst disasters that this state has ever seen, and you still have so many policyholders that are getting dragged through the mud by these guys, changing adjusters, delay. It's not like they don't have the money. Heck, when the FAIR Plan went belly up, Ricardo Lara was the one that just changed the rules that said the insurers that make up the FAIR Plan, it's not a state plan, it's a consortium of insurance companies, they now, when they go belly up, can pass on that fee to you, the ratepayer, in the entire state of California. Everything he has done has been at the bidding of these insurance companies, and they took so much advantage with that they were incentivized to drop policies because they knew once they got all of this, they could add back a few of those policies at a time and jack up the rates.
What is even harder to accept, and what literally keeps me up at night, is that no one in power is holding these companies accountable.
According to the Times, when insurers threatened to leave California in 2023, saying it was too expensive to insure homes in all the high-risk fire areas, the Newsom administration compromised with them and allowed them to raise rates as long as they agreed to write policies.
And this was the whole thing you kept hearing that, anytime that Ricardo Lara would do an interview, which is rare, he'd say, well, no, we're going to let them raise rates quicker. 60 days, they could get an approval, but they've got to write 85% of their coverage in high wildfire risk zones. Then ABC 7 in the Bay, they looked at the fine print, and what do they find? Oh, it actually says they only need to increase the coverage by 5%, and they get those rate increases.
Compromised with them and allowed them to raise rates as long as they agreed to write policies in the state's fire-prone areas.
He said that his plan would make insurance companies increase their sales in fire areas.
But the Times found loopholes in a secret deal that was negotiated with the insurance industry.
It's collusion, I tell you. I mean, if this isn't collusion, what is?
But the Times found loopholes in a secret deal that was negotiated with the insurance industry that all but eliminated that guarantee. And instead of renewing policies in high-risk fire areas, the insurance companies eliminated them.
Think of how many policyholders were dropped by State Farm and some of the other major insurers in Altadena, in the Palisades, sometimes weeks before the fires. In fact, there were some people, they got their non-renewal, and that non-renewal was about to be over, and they would have no policy days before the fire.
Offloading billions in costs and liabilities, and still raised homeowners' rates. The Newsom compromise.
And by the way, I don't know what the total answer here is. If it's really true that insurers can't make money here in the 5th largest market in the world, and they really can't make money, because I'll tell you, you keep raising these rates, people are not going to be able to afford the homes that they're in now, especially people on fixed incomes, then I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the whole concept of insurance has to go away.
The Newsom compromise was also supposed to keep homeowners off the state's overburdened FAIR Plan. But the opposite occurred, and thousands of homeowners were forced to become FAIR Plan policyholders, costing them a significantly higher amount for a lot less coverage.
Yep. And of course, what did we find out also? The FAIR Plan has been writing illegal policies where state law says they have to cover smoke damage, and they've been denying claims left and right, saying, no, we don't.
That, in fact, FAIR Plan enrollment doubled since the commissioner announced his deal. Insurance companies dropped far more policies than they have promised to increase due to Commissioner Lara's deal.
Yeah, for all of the talk of, okay, all these strategies are going to depopulate the FAIR Plan, and what we need to do is depopulate the FAIR Plan. There are too many people on the insurer of last resort. That hasn't happened. And what do you know? The FAIR Plan's perfect for the insurance companies. Anything that they deem too risky, and too risky for an insurance company is anything that could have any possibility of them having to pay out a claim. The best model for the insurance company is you paying a premium for 40 years and never using it. That's a win for them. But anything that has any possible risk, well, let's dump them onto the FAIR Plan, which, again, we control. We can charge them worse rates for worse coverage. It's such a mess. And this is with what everyone says is the most highly regulated insurance market. I'll tell you, by the way, it's not any better in Florida. Florida doesn't have any of these regulations, and it's not any better. In fact, flood insurance triples year over year, and you have people who are in their condos in Florida who now are trying to sell their condos because their insurance is more than their mortgage and they cannot afford it. They are underwater, figuratively, not literally. There wasn't a flood. And what happens? No one wants to buy the condos because they can't afford the insurance.
And Lara responded to the Times article saying that we built the sustainable insurance strategy, knowing that insurance companies and interveners would prod and probe for loopholes they think.
Yeah, anytime Lara can, he likes to throw in the word interveners because he likes to think that Consumer Watchdog is to blame for all this. A consumer advocacy group that goes into these rate proceedings and says, why do you really need a 38% rate hike on rental property?
They think they can exploit. This is not a surprise. For now, reporting.
By the way, that's not a very good response. Of course they were looking for loopholes when the allegation is that Ricardo Lara is the one that negotiated these loopholes with the crooked insurance companies.
They think they can exploit. This is not a surprise. For now, reporting live here in Pacific Palisades, Mary Beth McDade. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
What do you think about this? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. The New York Times did an expose saying Ricardo Lara's sustainable insurance strategy that he was commissioned by Gavin Newsom to do, well, it gave the insurers everything they wanted and more, and he secretly negotiated loopholes which incentivized the insurance companies to drop as many people as they could before these regulations took effect. This is a nightmare, and I am with the residents of the Palisades. I am with the residents of the Eaton fire area and all the other fire victims in the last 7 years. This guy's got to go, and the end of 2026 can't come soon fast enough. Maybe pressuring Gavin to call for him to resign is the right thing, because I'll tell you right now, if Gavin Newsom thinks that he's going to run for president and that all of the fire victims are going to stay quiet about this disaster on top of all the other disasters in California, he's got another thing coming. The very least Newsom could do at this point to save his own skin is throw Ricardo Lara under the bus.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Because that's why the legislature didn't want to do anything about this. Gavin never wants to talk about this issue. If they could put it all on crooked Ricardo Lara, who, if you start really investigating that guy, you're going to find a whole lot of things that I wish I could talk about on the radio. Well, you're going to have someone to pin everything on. But at least we can get somebody in there. The least we can do is in 2026, when this seat is open again, make sure that whoever we put in there has experience in the insurance industry. Ricardo Lara got elected to that job because of term limits. He was termed out of the state legislature, and this was a safe place for him to go. He didn't know anything about this job. He didn't care about anything about this job, but it is a job where you can be easily influenced by the lobby that wants to, I don't know, fly you to Bermuda for a conference, fly you to New York, go to Colombia. Wonder what that one was about. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Do you think Gavin Newsom should throw Ricardo Lara under the bus and call for him to resign? I do. 800-222-5222. Let's go to Allie in Silver Lake. Allie, hello.
Hi, Randy. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I don't think that Gavin's going to do it because I believe 100% that Gavin is the one who's bought and paid for by the insurance company, and Ricardo Lara is just a stooge. He's just a tool, and that's why he brought him in there to do it. And whether he's getting tipped down or whatever it may be, I think Gavin's behind this, and he has to stand by him, and that was probably something he promised him.
Well, you notice Gavin never is one to criticize these insurance companies. In fact, he tries to not talk about the issue at all. He's like, oh, Ricardo Lara is handling that. I think there is a lot to what you're saying there, that everyone in Sacramento, because it's not just Gavin that takes insurance money. It's members of both sides of, the state legislature, Democrats and Republicans. They're all taking money from the insurance industry, the same industry that says they're broke and they can buy stadiums. If we can pin it all on Lara, it doesn't matter what happens. I think you're totally right.
And think about it. Why is he so confident doing this? Why? Because the person at the top is that's who he's doing it for. To me, this is so crystal clear. He's just a tool for Gavin Newsom. And I have an opinion on the 50. Is it called Prop 50? That just, I don't know. I know we're not on that topic, but I have a little opinion on that one.
Oh yeah, please share it.
Okay, it's with, you have to really kind of flex your imagination a little bit, but think of who we're dealing with, and then tell me if you don't think this is possible, that the no on 50 was really being run by the yes on 50.
Oh, there's definitely a possibility. I mean, you look how Adam Schiff won the Senate seat by elevating Steve Garvey. But I'll tell you right now, there is plenty of grifting within all the circles of the consultants who deal with the California Republican Party. And we've seen that time and time again. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Richard in San Jose. Richard, hello.
Hey, Randy, how you doing today?
Doing great.
So what's the possibility of a recall on this clown if Gavin can't do his job? And then what about a class action lawsuit from all these people that got jacked out of their insurance?
Oh, I think that's definitely coming. You already have everyone in the Palisades and Eaton Fire lawyering up for all the other things that are going on. And yeah, if you can prove that there was collusion between the insurance commissioner and these insurance companies, this may beat qualified immunity, and the state may be held responsible for all the destruction and all the hell that these people have had to go through of trying to get their claims paid. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Tom in San Jose. Tom, hello.
Hey, Randy. Great job.
Thank you.
I'm calling. I'm blessed the second that I heard you guys were on the radio. You guys are doing an awesome job, you and John. And I think I speak for everybody that's watching what's happening to California and has watched what has happened to California over the years. I've been calling it for decades that this was the blueprint of how they're going to take over. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I vote every time I vote, you guys. Don't get me wrong. But they control it, man. After this Prop 50, it's pretty obvious that they control it. And however they're doing it, I guess I'm looking for some words of inspiration. You're really good at it, Randy, so I'm glad that you picked up the phone, because what can people hear from you that at least have some good ideas on what we're going to do if we're ever going to get California back?
Well, I'll tell you what needs to happen is we're going to need much more participation. We're going to need a real grassroots effort, not an effort where we donate money and it gets wasted away by grifters. 2/3 of Republicans did not vote on Tuesday. 2/3. That is an embarrassment.
Absolutely. I was the 1/3 that went out there and said, I've called in before to other shows, and they always get me wrong. they're like, you're what's the problem? It's like, no, dude, I go and I vote. I'm not the problem. I've been talking about this for a long time. I don't really have a big voice. People like you and John, you have a big voice, and I was very grateful to hear you guys on the radio because you talk about what we need to hear, and I think you talk for a lot of us. And what better talk show hosts can you have for the conservative movement? And you're 100% right. I'm tired of listening to everybody that says, oh, this and that, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, but you also need to go out and do your part. I mean,
you really, really do. I'm so sorry we are late for a break, but thank you so much for the call, Tom. Appreciate it. It's the John Phillips Show. I will make a quick correction. I said 2/3 of Republicans didn't vote. According to the latest turnout, it was only 55% of Republicans that didn't vote in Prop 50. We've got more coming up, including an interview with Ricardo Lara on this crooked scandal. It's Jimmy Buffett Friday on the John Phillips Show. It's Randy Wang here, and the phone number to join us is 800-222-5222. 1-800-222-5222. Whether you're in Southern California, you're in the Bay Area, you're in Sacramento, San Diego, Fresno, or you're outside the state of California listening, because this is still the best talk radio in the entire country, give us a call, 800-222-5222. You can also email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, we do 3 hours of this every day, and then I go home, and then I broadcast live from my gym room in the San Fernando Valley at 5 p.m. on our Southern California station, KABC. So if you want to hear that, go to KABC.com or get the KABC app. Let's go to Barbara in Vallejo. Barbara, hello.
Hi, Randy. I was just thinking maybe the 55% of Republican voters have already left the state. My father passed away. He lived with me. He passed away back in May, and I called the county to take him off the voter rolls, and they said they did, and he got a ballot. I was so tempted to send it in because I figure everybody else does that, right? But no, I shredded his ballot. But I'm thinking, all these people are getting ballots, and they're either not alive or they're not in the state anymore.
Well, and to that point, in Los Angeles County, we've been sending a ballot to a woman that died in 1994.
Jeez. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's a really interesting point, Barbara. Thank you so much for the call. One of the things that's interesting about doing a special election on mid-decade redistricting is just how many people have moved out of the state of California since 2020. Now, I don't think it was 3 million Republicans, but yeah, that could make up for some of it. By the way, according to the current registration, 5.8 million Republicans, 2.6 million of them voted. When you look at the turnout, and these numbers will go up a tiny bit, but the yes side had 5.3 million votes. The no side had 3.2 million votes. If every single registered Republican who still lived in the state had voted, I don't know if Prop 50 would have passed, but good luck getting 100% turnout anywhere. Now, Ricardo Lara has a lot to answer for, but there are a lot of news channels that he's not going to go on with. Most notably, ABC7, either in the Bay or Southern California, because ABC7 in Southern California reran the story that was posted about Ricardo Lara and his taxpayer-funded travel, including the South African safari. So he did have to do something because this New York Times piece is damning. And he did call in or Zoom in to CBS LA, which is strange because he lives in LA. But let's hear what he had to say.
Hugh, did insurance companies use a loophole in state regulations to drop high-risk homes?
Well, I don't know if you can call it a loophole if it was a deal negotiated with Lara.
And still get their rate hikes approved.
Yeah, it's a question many people are asking. It's the allegation in a New York Times investigation. Consumer investigator Christine Lazar joins us now with more on the allegations. And you have reaction from the Insurance Commissioner, Christine.
Yeah, good morning. So the state's sustainable insurance strategy was created to encourage insurers to write more policies in California, especially in those fire-prone areas. And in return, those insurers could raise rates. But critics say the strategy isn't working. I'm joined now by Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here with you.
So to begin with, do you think the strategy is working?
Well, the truth is that we actually been collaborating with the New York Times for months.
That doesn't help. We've been collaborating with the New York Times, who exposed that I made a secret deal with the insurance companies 2 years ago that incentivized them to drop tens of thousands of policies.
Well, the truth is that we actually been collaborating with the New York Times for months.
I mean, if you think about it, what's the actual story here? Was it that the climate was so bad in California that the insurers were dropping so many policies because they couldn't do business here that Ricardo Lara had to bend over backwards and give them everything they wanted for them to come back? Or is the story the insurance companies knew that Ricardo Lara was going to give them everything that they wanted, so they had an incentive to drop every policy they could left and right, because in a couple of years they could come back and rewrite them at much higher rates? This is a huge scandal.
Well, the truth is that we actually been collaborating with the New York Times for months, providing extensive background and information. And we are barely in the implementation stages of what is truly really first of its kind strategy.
Yes, give the insurers everything they want. And Ricardo Lara promised, by the way, that by mid-2025, you're going to see some major change. Then a few months ago, he said, by mid-2026, you're going to see some major change. Ricardo Lara's policies that were supposed to get people off the FAIR plan have been in effect now for almost a year. And guess what? The amount of people on the FAIR plan has only gone one direction, and it's not down.
And we are barely in the implementation stages of what is truly really first of its kind strategy. And so, we are still in the inception of this. And so are we expecting insurance companies to try to find loopholes? Absolutely.
I don't know who, and if you notice, this is the same statement that he put out to all the other news channels today. I don't know who said that's the way to do this. To say, well, of course the insurance companies were going to find loopholes. You are the regulator. You're the one. So what your argument is, I'm not corrupt, I'm stupid. Which is an argument. I'll give you that. Ricardo Lara is not the smartest person in Sacramento.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
But I don't know how that helps you. I'm too much of a buffoon to see what the insurance companies were doing to me.
And so are we expecting insurance companies to try to find loopholes? Absolutely.
Again, if the insurers knew that Ricardo Lara was going to give them the ability to jack up rates quickly and without having to go through the process of proving why they needed them and use climate modeling that they won't show us or give us any data on to say, well, we need to raise the rates on everybody, then of course they're going to drop all the policies. Because guess what? The big insurers own the FAIR plan too. It's them. It's not a state plan. So they're getting money from that if you're going on the FAIR plan and they got to raise your rates. And now we're going to get you off the FAIR plan and we're going to raise your rates. Ricardo Lara did all of this. And if the argument is, well, I'm a moron, well, I guess that's also on us. We put this guy in there twice. I know it's a down ballot race, and I know some people don't pay attention to anything outside of governor, president, Senate, maybe congressperson. This job, and by the way, there is a ballot initiative to make this an appointed position, and I'm torn on that because, one, I think such an incredibly consequential position should not be left to the voters that will decide, let's give it to Ricardo Lara so he can say he's the first statewide openly gay person, because that's what we did in 2018. But if it's an appointed position, well, there's also lots of room for corruption there.
I mean, this is what they do along with the interveners, right? Trying to figure out ways to...
And again, when he says interveners, he means Consumer Watchdog. And his allegation is the Consumer Advocacy Group is the one that's really crooked here. which should tell you everything you need to know about bought and paid for Ricardo Lara.
Trying to figure out ways to cut corners, but we're expecting this. And this is why the sustainable insurance strategy has something that we've never had before: reporting and data requirements, where we're going to be able to track this.
This is the same guy that when State Farm, after the fire, said we needed emergency rate hike increase, he said yes, but you have to have a hearing in 2 months to prove it. But I already said yes. Then they had a hearing. They didn't really prove their case. It went through anyway. And then what did they do? Immediately filed for another rate hike.
Reporting and data requirements, where we're going to be able to track this for the first time. And so we welcome the reforms, and we welcome news media to help us, be able to catch this.
News medias? Well, I guess he's leaning into, they got around me because I'm not smart.
I'm very kind of sketchy. News media to help us,
It can only be one of two things at this point. He is either so corrupt that he was bought and paid for and gave away the state of California to his benefactors, or he is so stupid that he let the benefactors talk him into this.
News media to help us.
But it's pretty explosive to think that the reason that so many major insurers were dropping policies was not because it's so hard to do business here, which is a great cover, but because they knew that if they dropped all these policies, it was a perfect time to get everything they wanted from their insurance commissioner and come back to the market and jack up the rates on everybody, including you, the existing policyholder.
News media to help us.
Again, even with the stringent standards before this sustainable insurance strategy, just in my own life, and I do not live in a wildfire risk zone, I live in the flats of the San Fernando Valley. My home insurance has nearly doubled in the last 5 years.
News media to help us, be able to catch this, because it's going to take all of us, because we've never done this before.
We need the New York Times to help catch the loopholes that I wrote.
Be able to catch this, because it's going to take all of us, because we've never done this before, to be able to modernize our market, to be able to understand how these fires are impacting, and climate change are impacting our markets.
And this is the other thing. Yes, the fires that have been going on have been more destructive than ever before. And sure, Gavin Newsom will go on his rant about Mother Nature. She bats first, she bats 1,000. But we have made it so the insurance companies can say that they have proprietary models that show the entire state's going to melt. Whether that's true or not, they get to jack up your rates because of it, and we don't get to look. And he's the guy that offered that.
Because we cannot have regulations that are static and, keep us from being stagnant and allow another 30 years of not having, outdated regulations to keep us moving forward.
So now that we know that there are these loopholes that they're taking advantage of, because the New York Times found that the top 3 insurers in the state dumped 50,000 policies before those new regulations were finalized.
Because they knew what they were getting. They were the ones that negotiated with Ricardo Lara. So, of course, they're going to drop a whole bunch of policies because they can make so much more money, not just with the FAIR Plan, which, again, they own, but with all the rate hikes that now they get, because the narrative has been established that they can't afford to do business here.
What do you...
How's that stadium, State Farm?
What do you now go back to these insurers and do? How do you, make them basically play by the rules?
Well, what you do is resign because nobody's trusting you.
Well, we're in the process of implementing all these new regulations that we got done last year. So as we are rolling out...
By the way, he's had this job for 7 years. Might be the worst and most destructive elected official in California, and that's saying something.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
We'll hear what Ricardo Lara has to say in his defense about the loopholes that he negotiated with the insurance companies to incentivize them to drop 50,000 policies before the destructive wildfires. Coming up next, 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Connie in Oxnard. Connie, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great.
I'm making pies this afternoon and listening to your radio program. And it just occurred to me, I left Northridge after the Northridge earthquake when the insurance company failed to fulfill all of its obligations to me there. And I'm beginning to believe that this is all kind of like a land grab conspiracy. They did it in Maui. They did it in Paradise. They want Malibu. They're restricting even rebuilding sections of Malibu. And I don't know so much about Altadena, but I just think this is a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of power that see, and they're all in cahoots. So all you need to do as insurance companies is pay them a bribe. So I just wanted to throw that in there. As an old lady, I may sound whack, but I've seen it before.
Well, and to that point, I mean, when you make it so impossible to rebuild, whether it's just the process of going through the Coastal Commission or getting the permits or getting your claim paid from the insurance company, and you realize that you can't rebuild and you give up and you decide you're going to sell, who's there to buy your land? Private equity.
Absolutely. It makes me even think back to the Rancho systems, and I kind of wonder if there isn't some big thing where they just want the elite want, just huge fiefdoms, I guess. And then we can all be their slaves.
Well, there's definitely been a lot of that going on. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. I mean, Hawaii is a really good example. Like when you think of how much of those beautiful islands are like now literally owned by the tech billionaires, how much of Kauai Mark Zuckerberg owns? Heck, how much of Maui does Oprah own? And how much of Lahaina was bought by private equity and all this other stuff? No one thinks that, anyone intentionally burned down these neighborhoods to do this. Of course not. But I think there's definitely taking advantage of an opportunity. And I don't think those neighborhoods will ever come back the way that they were. I mean, there's too many people that it's going to be too difficult to do that, especially the elderly that are out there. So here, let's go back to Ricardo Lara on CBS LA.
So as we are rolling out our new reforms, we are in the process now of making sure that as we have these guarantees now for coverage, which, by the way, no other state has, we have now updated tools, updated technology that allows us to guarantee that they have to grow in these wildfire distressed areas.
By the way, there's a difference between wildfire prone areas and wildfire distressed areas. There's a discrepancy as to what the state defines that is and what Ricardo Lara defines that is and what the insurance companies define that is. And the fine print to his policies is they have to write 5 more policies to get all the rate hikes they want.
Which, by the way, is something that no other state has. We'll be able to track that now real time to make sure that, one, that our FAIR plan is depopulated, that insurance companies are coming back into these communities.
None of that is happening. The FAIR plan has doubled in the last 2 years, and that is with Ricardo Lara implementing his sustainable insurance strategy. That's all the time we have for today. I'm back at 5 o'clock on KABC in Southern California. If you're in the Bay and you want to listen, go to KABC.com or search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts, or get the KABC app. It sits there right next to the KSFO app. And get the KMJ Now app, because we do a replay of the Fix California Hour Saturdays at 2 for our friends in the Central Valley. Have a great weekend, everyone. It's the John Phillips Show.